Hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. This is Lena with Especially Made for Me. And I'm thankful that you're here with me. I'm going to be doing a swag today with a cross form. So I want to show you because I already made, I've made a couple already. But this is the one that we're going to be making together today. So I want to show you what we're going to be working on. Now it is, and I'm hoping, from what I can tell, it looks like the color's coming out okay. It's like a very light peachy color. It almost matches my my dress. But that is the color of our wreath for today, our swag rather. And we're going to be using some ribbons and some mesh and excuse me, we're going to be hopefully adding some flowers. I thought originally I was going to be adding the flowers to this one, and silly me, I turned on my skillet, or I thought I turned it on. I plugged it in and did not actually turn it on. So the glue wasn't ready for me to add flowers to it, but the thought was for me to add some flowers to it. But I showed it to my husband and he likes it without the flowers. So I don't know, we'll go either way. I do have some flowers out that I'll show you, and depending on time, I kind of figure out a couple of ways that we can save a little bit of time so that maybe we can have time for flowers as well, so we can add some florals. But isn't it cute, just in time for Easter and spring and all that? So this is a final product without the flowers, but we also will be working on making a bow, so we'll do that together. So I'm going to put this to the side and show you what we're going to be needing. Of course, we need a cross wreath form. You can get these at the Dollar Tree. So very inexpensive, just $1 for one of the wreath forms. We will need, since we're doing the bubble method, we're actually going to be cutting our chenille stems in half, and you're going to need 50 pieces, so 25 chenille stems, if I calculated that correctly. Cut in half so we can have the 50. You will need the some zip ties. I pulled out 5. I think I counted that correctly as well, because I like actually using the zip ties to tie my wreath when I restart on a new edge, and I'll show you that as well. And then I also use one for the bow. That being said, you will need at least one more chenille stem or pipe cleaner, your color of choice. I also use that for the back of my bow, and I'll show you how I put that together as well. So we'll be working on making a bow together today. So that is it for actual supplies. Of course, you're going to need a mesh. I use the 10 by 10, so 10 inches by 10 yards. And normally when I do the bubble method, which I have on a couple of other videos, I use the 21 inch because it gives more coverage, but I usually use that for the round ones or the square ones, the square forms. So today with this cross form, it is slightly less wide than the others, so we can actually get away with using a 10 inch by 10 yards roll of mesh, and I'll show you how that works. We'll use actually a lot less, and we can use a whole roll if we follow the recipe. Don't do like me the first time. I didn't follow the recipe and thought I could get away with it. But you could actually just do the whole cross with just one roll of the 10 inch. And we're gonna get started, and you can see how I work it out, and I'll give you that recipe. I don't think I wrote it down on the bottom of the video, but I will add that on later and I'll show you. So to give you that recipe, in case you want to write that down, if you're going to be doing this with me, or if you're going to do the replay later to do it, you can see the cross is divided into different sections, just like our all wreath forms are. So we're going to do 12 bubbles on the top part of the cross. We're actually going to do a double bubble, double the size bubble for the middle. So we're not counting that. So we're going to start with 12. Then we're going to go down to 10. Then we're going to do 8 on the next section. And we're going to go back up to 10. And this one is actually smaller, but we do 10 so that we can kind of do like a wrap around on the bottom of the cross. And then on each side, we're only going to be doing 5 bubbles. And that is because we're making that bigger bubble in the middle. And of course our bow is going to be in the middle, so that's still going to provide some coverage for your cross. So 12, 10, 8, 10. We're going to do 5 and 5. And then I'll show you about that big bubble. So what I've done is I'm going to start it from the beginning with this other roll. And then I'm going to move on to one that I had already started to try to save us a little bit on time. But I want to show you a couple of tips on how I actually save on going from one side to the other without having to cut the actual mesh. So I want to make sure I show you that for each one of those sections, the middle part and going from the starting on the sides of the cross. So I'm going to go ahead and change the view of the camera as usual, so that then we can see the top view, and I'm going to move my keyboard out of the way, and then you should still see me on the corner of your screen as well. So I'm going to just do that here for a second, and if you're out there, just wave at me, say hi, put a comment on, just so that I know that you're out there just doing this with me. Okay, here we go. So give me a second here. I'm going to try to make sure we don't get any interruptions. I should have done that at the beginning. Okay. There we go. These are the ribbons that we'll be using, and you saw it on the bow, but I want to show you the rolls. So we have just like an off-white, very light beige. We have the checkered. It's got the yellow, the pink, lime green, a little bit of white on it. Then we have our darker fuchsia color, but it's got some circles instead of the squares. We got the purple, the teal, lime, orange, yellow, all sorts of nice little colors on there. And then our background color for the bow will be this color. And these are both 2.5 inches. The other ones are 1.5 inch. Alrighty, so to get started, let me go ahead and turn this thing off. We are going to get our mesh, and actually I think I'm gonna move my little view out of the way so I can see. Please let me know if you're watching, if you can hear me okay, if the resolution is okay. I'm getting some messages here, some warning from YouTube. So I want to make sure that everything's all a go. Okay, don't see any comments. Hopefully we're all good. Okay, so we're going to gather our mesh, and there's a couple of different things you can, different ways you can do that. You can of course just go straight across and ruffle it up. You can gather your corners and just kind of mush it. It doesn't matter. The main thing is just to gather our mesh so that we can get it tied on there and get it secured so that we can go ahead and start making our bubbles. So this is a metallic mesh. Normally when I use metallic mesh, I try not to cut them. I learned the hard way. Once you start cutting metallic mesh, it kind of goes all over the place. It starts fraying a lot. So it's best to use your metallic mesh, just so that you'll know, as an FYI. If you have metallic mesh, especially if you get those the inexpensive ones where they usually have them on sale, or trying to get rid of them and they're little to nothing, they have a half off, so you pay like $2.50 or something like that. Normally, and you can, I'm going to hold it up a little bit more on the other camera, but you see how it's very shimmery. It's got the little metallic things actually run through those square holes to kind of fill it in some. But it does fray a lot when you cut it. So try to, if you can, depending on the projects that you're working on, to use it for the things that you don't have to cut it. Like for the loops, the bubbles, things like that. The poof method. But if you're having to do ruffles or, you know, anything where you would have to cut it, please, please, please use something else other than metallic. Unless you're not too concerned about things fraying on you. So this is the way I kind of hold my first section. I'm going to try to, so that you can see it here. I'm just basically going to tie the mesh onto the wreath form using the zip tie. And I normally just do that on my starting point, just to make sure it's nice and snug and secured. And it won't go anywhere, especially if I'm going to be pulling on it, like with the bubble method. I'm going to be pulling and tugging and different things. Just want to make sure it stays put. Excuse me a second. I'm going to go ahead and bring some tools over here. Now once you pull it nice and snug, make sure it's nice and tight, then you can go ahead and cut off the excess. Okay, and I'm going to turn this over just so I can show you some of that fraying just from the ending of it, the start of it. Seeing all of that fraying, let's see if you can see that right there. That's what would happen if you end up cutting it, and every time you cut it, it'll fray. So just keep that in mind. I normally just cut some of that off. I don't cut it too short, just because you want to make sure that it has enough to hold on to the stem and to the frame. Okay, so here's the first tip when doing the bubbles with a 10-inch roll. Instead of, normally with the 21-inch, we make pretty big poofs and bubbles and all that. We normally go about, you know, 6-10 inches out, depending on what we're making. So with this one, we're only going to go 5 inches out. So you can either measure it right on from your board or ruler. You could eyeball it. I normally just put that beginning of my, you know, move this out so you can see. You could put your beginning at the 1 or the 5. Just make sure you count just for the 5 inches. Or you could eyeball it after that if you like. You could also use a ruler. Hello! Thank you for joining us. How are you? So we're going to go ahead and count for our 5 inches. And I'm just using my board for that. And then as you go, just to make it easier, kind of take a look at your edges so they'll be pointing out. It'll make it easier when you're having to open them up, because we do want to make sure that we open each bubble. The more open our bubble is, the more coverage we have. So for our chenille stems, if you notice, we have them already cut in half, as I mentioned earlier. We just kind of fold them like a U shape and just kind of put it down, almost like for us ladies doing the bobby pins or something like that, or if we do florals using those pins. And we're just going to hold it and then just kind of twist in the back of it. Give it about 2 or 3 twists to make sure it's nice and tight, and push up. And then we just want to make sure that our bubble is nice and open. Okay, and I'm going to show you, I'm going to continue all the way to the middle, because I want to make sure I show you that what I mentioned earlier about our middle. And then I'm going to switch over because I want to show you the other pointer for the sides. So same thing, we're going to continue doing this 12 times for our first section. And again, we're just using a 10-inch, a 10 by 10 roll of mesh instead of the usual 21-inch. And just want to show you how you can actually make it work for doing a cross swag without having the extra expense of the 21-inch. Just gotta follow that recipe. So our first part of the recipe is doing our 12 bubbles. And we're keeping it at 5 inches every time we do the bubble. Doing well here. Kind of a little hot at the moment. I turned on my skillet hoping that we can have time to do some florals today. And I'm feeling the heat. But other than that, I'm good. I thought I had turned it on earlier when I finished the swag. And I was going to start doing flowers on it. And I guess I plugged it in and didn't turn it on. Silly me. So on here, again, we're just making sure our little bubbles are nice and open. So we want to make sure we open them as we go, because that'll help us determine our fullness. But I promise you, if you do the 12 on this top part, it'll be nice and full as long as you open those poofs up. Okay, again, just going from the top down and then just giving it a twist at the bottom, just to make sure it's nice and tight. And then opening up our bubble. Open, open, open. Okay, so today, in case we didn't make it here right at the beginning, we are making a cross swag, and I'll pull it back out here in a second to show the final look. Or maybe not a second, but in a little bit. And we're going to be making 12 of these poofs, these bubbles, on this top part of the cross. And then we'll move on to the next tip. Okay, and all I do is just put the chenille stem from the top and just hold it down. Just basically holding it down here. And then just giving it a twist at the bottom. One of the big keys here is to make sure we open these up. Sometimes that edge wants to stay in there. So no cutting of mesh today. Let's see, we're at 7. Now I'll show you another tip here on how to count those up if you don't want to be moving the bubbles to count them. Because you can count them from the back too because of the way the chenille stem shows up. I normally can't keep the count while I'm working on the on the item. I have to be counting as I go, like double checking myself. So here it is on the other side. So if you actually have these moved to the side, you can easily see how many you have and count them up. So that's another way you can count them if you lose count. You do. It's a metallic mesh. I was saying earlier, it's one of those that it's better to use for when you don't have to cut it. Metallic mesh for, I guess because of the way that it's made, it frays very easily. So when you cut it, you have a lot of fraying to deal with. So it's easier or better to use it for, you know, like the poof method or bubble method, or like in this case, you could do even the loop method and all of that with it. But once you start cutting it, it makes a little bit of a mess and it starts fraying all over. So unless you're making something that the fraying actually adds to what you're making, if it actually makes it look better with the fraying. But I don't know. But I like the it's almost like it's, you know, adding a little bit of bling. Gotta have a little bit of bling. So I do like the shiny. But I normally use it for when I don't have to cut it. So I don't like having to deal with too much of the fraying. You can see it's already looking pretty full on the top. And we're not even at 10 yet. See, I already forgot where we were at. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We're at 9. So with this one, and I think this one is actually a little bit fuller than the one that I was using before, we may be able to get away with doing 10 since it's so much fuller. So I'll probably just do the one more and see how it goes. But if you find, and I'll show you this other one that's over here, it's a little bit stronger of a material. It's not considered a metallic, but the metallic is not run through all the way as in one run. I don't know if you can tell the difference. It's like all throughout the actual mesh. And see if I can put it, you can kind of see the line. This one is almost like it's got little sparklies going through, so it's not it doesn't fray as much. But because it's a little bit although it's stronger, it's a little bit thinner, you actually need more of the material. But that's the main way I can show you to tell them apart with the metallics. Alright, giving it one nice tight. Okay, and opening up our loop. Okay, so it looks like on this one we can do just the 10. But our recipe that I mentioned earlier calls for 12 here. So depending on your mesh, depending on how much it poofs, even at the 5 inches, you may need to do just the 10 like in this one. Or like I did with this other one that we're going to be finishing up. It's actually, we have 12 on here. But I wanted to show you this because in the middle, what I do, I don't continue through making loops all the way through the middle or bubbles. I do one bigger bubble in the middle and then I continue on with the bottom. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, yes. That might have been more that we're trying to get rid of it. They didn't want to deal with it. But now you know how you can use it without it doing all that crazy fraying. Okay, for our middle, what we'll basically do, instead of doing multiple bubbles to cover our middle, we're going to do one big bubble. And since we're doing 5 inches, we're just basically going to do double the amount. So we're going to do a 10 inch instead of a 5 inch. And that helps with the making our middle for when we start putting our bow, because it helps our bow if we make a bow to rest on it, or if we're going to be doing florals, it gives us something for the floral items to actually nest into. So here we go. Same thing, we're going to run our chenille stem. And make sure it's nice and tight. Okay, so not to worry if it looks a little bit bigger, because it is, but remember we're going to be adding more to the middle. So that's what I do with that middle. So we're going to continue what you would normally do to continue with the cross. Just continue after that doing your 5 inch ones. And remember with the recipe, I'm going to go ahead and call out the recipe again since I forgot to write it on the bottom of the video. You're going to do 10 to 12 up here depending on your mesh. You're going to do your bigger one, your big bubble here, twice as big. Then you're going to do 10 bubbles on your next section. You're going to go down to 8 on the next one. And you're going to go back up to 10 bubbles on this one. And we make more, even though this one's smaller, because we want to make sure that it loops around on your bottom and cover the bottom of your frame. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put this one to the side and bring this one over. So we normally will continue all that throughout. So I'm going to just show you what it looks like using that other mesh. Did it all the way across the same way. I have this bigger bubble here in the middle. But I did do the 12, the 10, the 8, and the 10 on this one because the mesh is a little bit different. So, and I'll show you what it should look like when we're done, in case you weren't here at the beginning. This is what it should look like when we're done. And if we add flowers, of course, then it'll have some florals to it as well. So here we go. Want to make sure I show you the tip on the sides, because there's another thing to consider when we do the sides of our cross. And I mentioned earlier the saving option. Instead of doing the 21-inch, we're doing the 10-inch roll. So on here, to save as well, instead of cutting and going back and cutting or trying to weave it through, it uses more mesh. So I've come up with another way of doing it to where you don't have to use as much. And still we're going to need to use our zip tie to secure it in place. And we're going to grab our mesh and just gather it like you would, whether you ruffle it or scrunch it, whatever you do, just to get your edges together. Okay, and just like we did our top on the other one, we're going to do it here but on the side, and I'll show that. So we're basically going to go from the top and just kind of swoosh it over and use then our chenille stem. Ah, thank you. Use our chenille stem to secure it in place onto that frame. I'm going to do it one-handed here. Let's see, here we go. Trying to make sure it doesn't move on me. And I'll show you some of that fraying too, because it does happen. Like I said, every time you cut it, it's going to fray, just because of the metallics they use. Let's see if it'll show here on the camera. See all that fraying? So every time you cut it, you would have to deal with that. So the more you cut it, the more fraying, and then of course that looks kind of funky. Okay, so once we have our zip tie nice and secure holding our mesh, we can cut that off. And then I like to trim this a little bit just so that it doesn't show as much. Just make sure that you leave about an inch, 3/4 of an inch to an inch, to make sure it doesn't come off of your zip tie. So you want to make sure it stays put. So now we can continue doing the same bubbles. I'm going to move some of these things out of the way here. That way it won't get cut up. Okay, so we're going to continue doing the same bubble. 5 inches. And once you measure, you can eyeball it. It's up to you. I'm going to turn this way. So I'm going to do it left-handed. I'm going to try to anyway with the mesh on the other side. I don't know if that's going to work too well. No, I don't like it that way. I'm not lefty. Anybody a lefty out there? I know my brother is. I just can't do it left-handed. Here we go. Okay, so we're going to do our 5-inch poof or bubble. Get our chenille stem, and I just kind of make it into like a little U, just so I can come from the top to the bottom. And we're only putting that, securing it to those top two. Let me do that again. Let me show you. These two top middle bars is what we're securing it to. So we're just going to make sure that our chenille stem goes over those only, and then we secure it on the other end. We're just going to give it a twist. Your kids are lefty? I think that is awesome. My brother says because he's lefty, he can bowl better than a right-handed person. I don't know how true that is, but I've heard a lot of good things about left-handed folks. Okay, opening up our little poof and going on to the next one. Okay, so on this one for our recipe, we're only going to do five bubbles. Okay, just making sure it's nice and secure. And let's make sure that we open up our bubble. Again, the more we open up our bubble, the more coverage we have. So that is definitely tip number one, because we want the coverage. And we are using a 10-inch instead of a 21-inch. So we need every bit of it to be open. Okay, and then we just keep on squishing it on over. And if you can open it before you even tie it, hey, you can do that too. I try to, but I'm just not that coordinated. Okay, just again twisting maybe about 3 times to make sure it's nice and snug. Okay, we're up to 3. We need 2 more. Okie dokie. We're getting there. 1 more. I think I might have made one of these a little too big. We'll see. We'll find out when we're at the end. I did that once, trying to just do whatever and just eyeballing everything, and got all the way to the end. I was like, I'm missing a poof on one end because I don't have enough mesh. So that's what I was saying. It's very, very important to follow that recipe. Just kind of keep an eye out on, depending on the type of mesh that you're using, but definitely if you're using a metallic mesh, you'll have to follow that recipe for sure. Okay, so this is my other tip. I don't cut it. I'll show you what I do from here. I just take it off from the actual roll, because we're going to run it through the bottom and make it nice and tight and come out on this end. Sounds crazy, I know, but I've tried doing the cutting, and then I still needed more coverage for the middle, and then I still have to use more on the middle, and this seemed to take care of both of those things. So alrighty, here we go. So what we're going to do is actually run it through here and come under it and come out on the other side. So hopefully you can see that from the top. I'm going to just run it through that middle. And pull. Okay. get the chenille stems out of the way so that he won't get caught on there. I use just the one roll. This is the version for using the one roll of the 10-inch 10 by 10 roll, and it's following this specific recipe. It provides just the right coverage without having to use a second roll. So it takes a little bit of work. It takes about an hour to just put the mesh on because of that, but it does save you on having to use multiple rolls if you want to use more than one roll for the 10-inch, or instead of having to use the 2 of the 21-inch. So that's why I'm showing this now, because it gives that other, it gives just another option. Let's see. Do my little tie here. Make sure it doesn't move on me. Oops. Now if you want the poofs to be bigger and you want even more coverage, then the 21-inch would definitely work. That's normally what I use for when I do my other bubble wreaths. But for this I found, because we have the bigger bubble in the middle, so long as we do that and we're going to have our bow, we're going to have stuff in the middle, it provides just enough coverage doing it that way. I mean, you can't really see anything. Okay, and then we're going to run it back through so that we can make our other loop on the other side. A little bubble, and just pull nice and snug. You can pull nice and snug on it because it's I've already tied it off. And then we can make our next poof. Still doing 5 inches. This is how it looks on the back when you do that. So it gives you this little coverage here for when if you do florals or something, it'll still be covered on the back. Excuse me. I'm gonna make sure we open our bubble. The more open the better, because it gives us that coverage we want. Okay, still doing the 5 inches. Okay, and then we're just going to keep on pushing that in so we can have room for our other 3, because we have 2 now. We need 3 more. I do cover them sometimes depending on what I have on the back. If I feel that there's a lot of stuff going on in the back, if it doesn't look decent enough, if I can say it that way, if it doesn't doesn't have anything that might ruin anybody's door or the wall, then I don't cover it. But I do cover it if I do see there's a lot going on in the back, or that it might leave so much in the open that someone might start playing with it and then undo the whole the whole wreath. I do cover it up. I use a lot of the I think they call them placemats from the dollar store for my round ones. And then I use, I'll show you what I use for the other ones. Like for my square ones, sometimes I use some of these. They have little holes on it, so that way it helps it to secure it. I just cut it to the size that I need. I have bigger ones in a box, and I have smaller ones. These for my minis. And then they also have those, they're made out of like felt, like a felt material that can be cut, and other crafts are done with it. I can't even think of the word of those right now. But I also use those because they have them in different sizes as well. So I try to get them as big as I can, and then I just cut it to size to cover the back of my different wreaths or swags or minis if I need to. But I don't always cover them. Okay, just opening it up. I think this is our last one, but I don't know. We might need an extra one in here. Maybe I went too small since I'm trying to eyeball it. Not good to eyeball. I think we need a couple more. Let's see. Open, open, open. I'm gonna do maybe one more. Oh, I did have one more. Haha! I'm not going crazy after all. So I'm actually going to cut this so I can show you what I do on the end of this one. See, and we even have a little bit left. So if you want to, for example, add an extra loop on the two sides, you definitely can do that. On the other one, I did not have, I didn't have anything left on that other one that I finished. So I must have gone a little bit small on my 5 inches when I was eyeballing it. Okay, so on this end, what I do, is just kind of like I did it at the beginning there, so we can do the wrap around. I wrap around it, and then I do the zip tie to kind of give us that bit of extra coverage at the end, and then we open our loop. Now we can open, and then we can move our loops, because remember, in the middle we're going to have already more coverage. So there's our cross. and then we can work on our bow. So I'm going to go ahead and move this out of the way. I think I'm going to use the easy bow today. Let's see. Here we go. Get that stuff out of the way. Nope, we're going to put that. Silly me. Okay. Alrighty. So for our bow time. I think I've done a bow in a while here on YouTube. I have some other videos that you can watch for bows, but I haven't done any in a while. Okay, so we are going to start with our base color. And make sure I put this somewhere so it won't fly off on me. Let's see. Do that just so that you'll be able to see. Now try to do it upside down. We'll see how that goes. Just so that you can see it a little bit better. And maybe, let's see, you're actually viewing, you have a top view as well, so maybe you won't need that. You tell me which way might be better. If you need me to do it upside down, I'll do it upside down. If not, I'll do it the other way. So I'm just making a little dovetail. Know that it is just cutting towards your corner, towards the edge once you fold it in half. Now for this tail, I'm gonna go with, I think I'm gonna go with 15, because the other one I wanted at 12. So I'm gonna go a little bit bigger with this one. So let's see. I'm trying not to go upside down. 15. Okay. Okay, so we're going to give it a twist. And with this one, I'm going to go with a 6-inch, maybe about a 5.5 to 6-inch loop. Don't want to go too big because you don't have that much space from one end to the other. Okay. And I'm going to do just one loop on each side. Now for the last one, if you had something where it would be a different color on each side, you do have to do the twisting. If you don't have to do the twisting in the middle. I'm just used to doing that automatically. Okay, and you can check to make sure that they're both the same. A little bit bigger, closer to 6-inch, so I'm kind of pulling a little bit here. And I'll show you what when I do the next one while I'm doing that. I want to make sure that we can see some of that teal coming out. Okay. Okay, and then we're going to cut. Do the same thing with the dovetail. Now you can cut it and then do your dovetail. I cut it twice. I just cut it right on the roll. Okay. So this is our base for our bow. Our bow base. Bow base. Okay, and we're gonna go to our next color. Do our dovetail. I love these scissors. Scissors. Okay, so with this one, excuse me, we're gonna go to a 12-inch. Now this one we do definitely have to do the twist. That's why I automatically do it, so I won't have to even think about it. So we're gonna go 12, seeing that way we can have a little bit more of the other one showing. Now for the loop, we're going to do a 5-inch because we want to see some of that teal on the back of it. So you're going to go about 1 inch smaller. You can measure it or eyeball it. Okay, just make sure if you need to, just kind of look at both to make sure that the loops are the same. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do a couple more. So I want to do 3 with this one. And you can match it with your previous loop. One more for each side. And again, on that last one, you don't have to do the twist because that ends up being your tail. Okay, and I'll show you what I do at this point. I start shaping the bow, even though it might make it, it may seem like it's a little too much to be shaping right from the get-go. Just like making sure that our loops are falling where I want them to fall. So you can start shaping where you want your loops to fall. And I do 3 because I want 2 to go towards the top, 2 towards the bottom, and then the ones in the middle to be right on top of that other base color. And then you still will be doing more shaping and moving around as you go, but that's just so that I can see the bow taking shape. Okay, so I'm gonna do the beige one next. This off-white. Now with this one, I'm only going to do 2. See, I had 3 before, now I'm going to do 2, so that way it'll fall in the opposite as what we did with the other. Okay, with these, since these are a little bit thinner, these are the 1.5 inch, I'm actually going to go a little bit longer. I'm going to go to 25 inches for the tail, and I'll show you here in a little bit for my reason for that. Oh, good, glad you like it. Took me a bit to kind of pick the ribbons because I wanted to make sure I had plenty of color. And sometimes my OCD kicks in. It's like, oh, that's just too much, or this is, you know, too many patterns and this and that and the other. So I kind of took myself out of it a lot of the times. So I had to just like, it's just fine. It's supposed to be multiple colors. It's, you know, spring and Easter, and we want to make sure we have colorful things, right? So on this one, we're going to go again just about 1 inch smaller on our loop, because we want to see the previous loop. We want to make sure that we don't hide it. So again, doing the same method, we're going to go ahead and do that twist and we can start shaping as we go, or you can shape it after. Okay, for the last one, we won't twist. I just want to make sure that both of these are about the same size. then we're going to cut. Now for this, you could do a straight cut or you could do a diagonal cut. It matters not, because we're actually going to be rolling those to give it that curl look. And you'll see that in a couple of minutes. Okay, and our last one. Excuse me. Again, doing that 25. With this one, we're only going to do one loop on each side. And again, instead of going smaller, since this is going to be in the middle in between those two off-white ones, we're going to go about the same size, but barely smaller, just very slightly. Since it's going to be in the middle in between those, it should be just fine. And again, on our last loop, we don't do that twist. And then we get to cut. Now for the fun part. We get to shape our bow, put it together, and attach it to our cross. Okay, so for this I use a chenille stem at first. We just want to make sure we run it on the bottom. Make sure that we get all of our loops, all of our ribbon. And we're going to slightly start it just to kind of make sure it's all in there. Key here, make sure that we grab all of our loops. Put our fingers here in the middle, make sure that we're grabbing nice and tight to pull up. And then we're going to move this towards our middle and to the back and tighten it up some more. Don't let go of your loops, because then you're basically going to be starting all over with that bow. But do not put it too tight to where you can't move your loops around. Okay, so here comes the shaping. Make sure all of our tails are in the right direction. Okay, see if I can do it this way so you can see it on the screen. Okay. Once you have them in the right position that you want them, you can then make that zip tie a little bit tighter. Again, we don't want it too tight to where we won't be able to move our ribbon and our tails, because we still have something else to do, and I'll show you. Okay, so more or less have it where I want it. So here's where that other chenille stem comes into play. In the back of it, we're going to run this through the middle. That's why we don't want to do that zip tie too tight, because we want to make sure we can run our chenille stem. Now once you have it in place, we can snug it, make it a little bit more snug. Check on your ribbon to make sure nothing is cut to where you won't be able to position it, excuse me, before making it too tight. Now if you see that it's a little bit scrunched like that, excuse me, you can just kind of wiggle it and it'll loosen up. Okay, and then just shape your ribbons and your loops. Once you're more or less comfortable, you can tighten it some more and cut the excess. And then we can do the fluffing, the final fluffing, once we put it on our swag. And the chenille stem ends up being what you will use to tie it on. So we'll do that here shortly. Okay, so there's our bow coming together. I'm gonna move these things out of the way. And I'll show you how this gets put on. So remember that big bubble that we made, it's right here in the middle. That is so that when you put your bow, it has something to sit on. If we have something really small or nothing on there, when we pull the chenille stem through, it basically makes your bow flat. So if we put something under it, like a ruffle, or in this case a bubble, it kind of gives it something to sit on. So it's kind of propping onto something versus being dragged to the back and then looks like it's all scrunched up. So that's just one of those tips on that. So to secure your bow, and then we'll go ahead and do our last fluffing of our bow, we're going to run the chenille stems right through here in the middle. Oops. And it should go right through the mesh. Okay, and you can kind of look at it on the other side just to make sure that it's facing the right direction in case it was moved with the stems. And then we can play with our tails, our little loops in our tails, and make our bow look pretty. So for now, I'm just gonna go ahead and tie it in the back. Make sure it doesn't go anywhere. Okay, and now we get to just position . Don't be afraid to tug on those loops. Another reason why I like using the wired ribbon is because they're so much easier to shape. And if you run your fingers through on the bottom of your ribbon, it kind of gives them a little bit of a curl, and I'll do those with the ones we're not going to be rolling up. Okay, so I mentioned about curling these longer ones, the ones that are just at 1.5. Let me pull these out of the way so you can see that. Let me see that on the camera. Okay. So what we would do is just basically roll it in. Just tuck it under, and we're going to roll. Roll, roll, roll. As tight as you can so it'll start taking shape. You can leave them up there. Normally, if I'm going to be adding flowers and things, I kind of leave them that way so they can get get the shape, and then I pull them down. Okay, so then with these, you could actually run your hands to the bottom, and that gives them that curl without, just kind of shape it up a little. Okay, so I'm gonna show you what I mean with these curls. So once you have them curled up, you can grab one of the ends and you could just pull on it, depending on how far you want it to come down. Just gives it a different look. And that is basically it. Just have a whole bunch of curls and ribbons and tails. You can make them as long or as short as you like. So that is it. Let me pull up that other one. And now we have two. Woohoo! So that is basically it. You can actually do the full cross with a 10-inch by 10-yard roll of mesh. Has plenty for coverage. You can't see any of the wires just by looking at it, just as they are. If you start looking, of course, if you look towards the side or the back, you know, kind of even when you turn it on the side, you really can't. So that is that's it with just keeping it without any florals. So by vote of hands, do we want to do florals on top of the mesh and the bow? So I brought out some let me go ahead and put one of these down so I can show you the flowers. Ah, so glad you love it. I love it too. I like all the different colors. Makes me happy. So originally I had thought about adding these. So I had these, they're magnolias. And then I thought, oh, but maybe some more color. And then I thought, oh, maybe a little bit more yellow. So I brought a whole bunch of my flowers out, and I thought, oh, maybe I can add some flowers all over it. But it looks so pretty without it, so I don't know. So maybe I'll do one with and one without and add them later. Still not too sure. When I asked my husband earlier, he was like, flowers? It looks pretty as it is. So I don't know. But I'm really leaning towards adding flowers later on. Or maybe I'll just do it on the one that I started earlier with the other color. So glad you love it. Quick and easy. Just takes a little bit more of the prep work with when you're doing the actual recipe, I guess, because it does take a little bit for that part of it. But other than that, this is it. Let's see, let me change the camera view. So I hope if I turn my mouse back on. Hello, hello, hello. Looks like I may have to turn off my little skillet. So here is our cross with all of our ribbons and all of our curls. Trying to quick fun project, nice and colorful. Only about an hour, not too bad. So glad, so glad you're joining me. You want flowers? Oh, I don't mind putting them on. We can play. We can definitely do one with flowers, one without. Let's put them on. Why not? I don't mind if we don't mind. So I'm going to turn this over so we can do that. And I'm going to change the camera view again, because why not? Let's go the other way so that way you can still see me. Okay. So flowers. Let's see, which ones do we want to use? I want them all. See, that's my problem. I want everything on it. So what about, let me cut out a few of each one and then we go from there. We just keep it fun. So I always like to push my leaves up before I cut it. And I always cut it long at first. And then I cut it to size as I need it. So we're gonna see this one. I like using some with the leaves, the greenery. Alright, I like the number 3. Let's start with 3. Okay. And I think I'm going to cut this one a little bit shorter. So I want one in the middle. All right, here comes our skillet. So a little spider. Okay, so I'm going to tuck it right in for the middle. Too cute. Decisions. Try to move these up a little bit so we can get a little of that greenery. And these don't move up anymore for me. So I am going to cut right above for that one. Thank you. Glad you like it. I'm going to add some glue here because I don't want this to come off once it's on. Okay, there we go. And one thing that I found that helps me when I have a bow and I'm putting flowers on the bow is to kind of tuck it under, because we want it to look like the flowers are just coming right, it's part of the bow. It's like it's just growing right out of the bow, if I can say it that way. Like the one in the middle. Me too. think I'm going to make that the focal point and not add any more of those. What do you think? We'll make it stand out. More. Okay, and we're gonna go with some yellow after these. I think we have enough of these others. Hello, yellow. Again, just tacking under. Hello, yellow. Let's see, I think I want to be bad. Do I want to be bad? That might be too long. Let's see. Too long. Might be too long. I was trying. Kind of wanted to have some of that greenery coming out. I have to cut them down to size. Alright, here's our 3. Just kind of building up the layers. Since we have some yellow, we're going to expand on that yellow. I don't think we need any more of this one. I might add some more pink. I don't know. How are we doing so far? Got some spider webs. Glue. Here we go. Just a few little flowers. Quick and easy. I'm afraid of adding too much, so I could keep on going. But here it is. Now we have our cross, same as before, but with some florals. Can we see it okay with that angle? I hope so. Alrighty. Well, thanks again for joining me. This was fun. Haven't done florals in a bit. I think it's I did just a little small centerpiece last time, showing how to do a quick one for yourself at home. But stay tuned. we'll be doing more. Of course, we'll be back again on Friday, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. So we'll be doing some more in the same theme, just trying to keep up with some of the fun colors and Easter and spring coming and all of that. And then I have a Mother's Day project that I'm working on, so I'll be doing that as well. And of course, fake desserts. So we just never know. We like to keep the variety going here on this channel. So glad you like it. Glad you're joining me tonight, Miss Monica. Thank you so much for showing me all the love, for just joining, for hitting the thumbs up and subscribing and sharing the video. I appreciate you all very much. So until next time, please do stay safe. Keep having fun, but stay liquid. Bye bye all.